Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Still, President of the Wisconsin Technology Council, and thanks for joining us today for our webinar, tutorial, whatever you like to call it, about the 2025 Governor's Business Plan Contest. We're really excited that you can join us and that you're considering joining with us this year in the contest. So I'm going to trot through some specifics about how you do it, what's going on, what the steps are. And I'll be joined by a couple of guests who have been there and done that in a couple different ways. Carol Hirschmugel from Conovate. She was in the 2019 contest, and her company continues to forge ahead. And Jonathan Fritz, he has been a judge for 21 years in this contest, and he's got background in law, venture capital, association management, and a variety of other things. And so he brings that kind of experience to the judging of the contest. So I'm going to start with one important fact, the deadline. That's going to be 11:59 p.m. on January 31st. So just a smidge before midnight. I wouldn't advise you to test that too closely. Your watch could be off. Hey, you never know. But it's if you can begin to get those in there, and that's good. The website is govsbizplancontest.com, and Julie Johnson is our contest administrator, and you can reach her at info@govsbizplancontest.com. So again, that's me, Carol, who you're going to hear from in a few minutes, and Jonathan. So we're excited that they can join us. So the contest over time has really been about trying to get prizes involved as well. And so we've had more than 4,800 entrepreneurs enter over time, and they've taken part they've come from 350 unique Wisconsin communities, which I think speaks to the statewide nature of the contest. And overall, they've shared in about 2.9 million in cash and services, as well as just getting a lot of exposure for their plans, their plans to build companies. And so it's been good for them. A lot of folks have had some good investment over time. Okay, Julie, you can move on. Again, it's a chance to compete for cash and in-kind prizes. And in-kind prizes, in this sense, could be things like office space, service help from people who have helped put together and stand up young companies in the past. You get a lot of feedback from the judges, and we deliberately have a lot of judges because we expect so many plans that we don't want to put them all on a couple of people. So it's a big crew that does that. And it's really a way to move, your plan from kind of a virtual reality status, virtual business status to reality. So it's all about when we started it in 2004, this mission is still the same, is try to encourage entrepreneurs to get into that startup stage of tech-enabled businesses in Wisconsin with tech being very broadly defined. Next. Some numbers. Over the years, 21 years now, 350 communities, as I noted. Here's the breakdown of our entries by category in 2024. And so there are 4 broad categories, and we've kept it that way since the inception because we find that, it's one of those things where if you can generally find a way to fit your entry into one of these categories. So advanced manufacturing, business services, information technology, and life sciences. Over time that we can chart, and we can't find everything, but at the same time, we know it's the folks who have been in this have raised at least 320 million over time. Not all just because of the contest, of course. They go from here to do all kinds of things after they leave the contest, but it's a good start on that kind of fundraising from angels and VCs and beyond. And it's a high survival rate. Generally speaking, startups, if you look at the national averages, there's a high mortality rate sometime in the first 5 years. And with our finalists, at least, we have noted in a couple of different surveys, we've had a 77% survival rate for those who get into that final 25. That to me is really impressive, and it shows that they're learning and they came to the contest with great ideas to start with. And the map that you see there, it shows where these contest entries have come from. Next one. So where are they now? Well, that's this list here includes some companies that have really done well since they were a part of the contest. And again, we're going to hear from Conovate in a little bit, and that's an excellent example. But and sometimes you get folks who do really well, but they didn't necessarily advance too far in the contest. Great example there is Fetch Rewards, which is, last time I checked, that's north of a $2 billion company with their consumer loyalty app and platform. So it's really good to see, how these companies are moving along. And again, in all these sectors that I outlined earlier. A few testimonials here. Take your time to read those if you wish, but I think they come from entrants who had some different views on what they got out of the contest. Karen Renee, talked about the guidance they went on through, as she went through, and what it's like to be in that last group. So these are folks who can speak to the value of the contest as you think about entering. So phase one, we call these the idea abstracts. Again, the 4 categories: advanced manufacturing, business services, IT, and life sciences, deliberately broad. These are 250 words. And that's a fairly strict number there, because we do get enough that we want to make sure that everybody's got a chance to, on a very similar plane, to compete. The categories within that are product or service description, customer definition, market description, the size and sales strategy, and then competition. And about 12 judges are assigned to review each plan. And these are all folks who have done well in their respective fields and have looked at a lot of business plans. So again, it's in those 4 categories that you'll comment on your plan, and we'll get more into this later when we do some Q&A with you, and also hearing from our other guests. Okay. Phase 2. Here we have an executive summary that takes on a little more heft. This is 1,000 words, and the top 50 entrants move on to this stage. Here the categories are in some cases similar or identical, but some cases are broadening out the reach of the contest. Company overview, product or service description, customer definition, market description, size and sales strategy, competition, management team. This is where you start to talk about your people, financials, and capital needs. And so, as you can see, it's a staged way to build on your plan. This is when we introduce contestants to mentors, and we have a number of mentors kind of on call, and you can submit questions to them, and it's just email at mentors@govsbusinessplancontest.com, and we're really pleased to have that. We have a boot camp scheduled for February 26th in Madison at the Quarles Law Office. And that is an exercise that'll take, I think, 3, 4, 5 hours. It depends a little bit on the makeup. But this is where we get to hear from others about the elements of a plan. And you get to meet the folks who are in the competition with you, as well as some guests who can help out as you move along. So phase 3. This is the top 24 executive summaries, and here's where you prepare a 15-minute pitch deck with a voiceover audio. And this is something relatively new in our contest the last few years, but it's both the judges and the contestants seem to enjoy it and see that and get a lot out of it because it helps helps set them up for things in the future. Same 8 criteria as in phase 2, and judges will review the pitch decks and select 3 finalists in each of those 4 categories. And so that gives us a dozen, and we call it that finals phase is called the Diligent Dozen. This will be live at the Wisconsin Entrepreneurs Conference, which will take place in Madison, June 4th and 5th. Free admission to that. Judges will be there, investors will be there from all over the state. That's generally been a good draw for those folks, and live judging. So it's the winners will be announced right there, both category and grand prize. So good. So here's the full timeline. You can see the various stages here, and it's it does take a while to get through all these stages, but at the same time that's good because you'll have a chance to take a breather, think about where you're at with your plan, take in some of the advice you hear from mentors, from judges' comments, from the boot camp itself, and we hope as many of you as possible can get into the boot camp because that's always a really valuable live exercise. So with that, I want to introduce Carol Hirschmugel from Conovate. You can see the slide here. She's with her co-founder. They have been working on advanced energy materials for safe batteries, which is, as you know, is a big deal in today's world as we think about how we power all the things that make life easier, better, and get people around in vehicles. So Carol, welcome.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you for the opportunity to give some tips and tricks to our people listening today.
Very good.
This is, what we're starting with here is some slides from my presentation. At that time, actually, I was at a different company, Safely. This company has transitioned. We changed ownership, etc. It's part of the journey, and I'll talk about that later. But we've always been working on advanced materials for safe lithium-ion batteries. So next slide, please, Julie. Great. So now we are Conovate, and that's myself, pictured with some of our more recent materials to spread the word to my customers. And we are redefining battery materials with homegrown innovation. We are also a women-owned small business certified by the WBENC, and any female founders online, I highly recommend looking to do that when you become a small business or if you are already a small business. It has awesome opportunities, and I'll come back to that a little bit later as well. Next slide, please. So, really important as you are preparing for all of these events coming up. If you have not already done customer discovery, make sure you do some and a lot of it. I was in a program called the I-Core program with National Science Foundation, where in 8 weeks you do over 100 customer discovery interviews. This is really critical for you to identify who is your customer and make sure that you have a good product market fit, because that is everything to getting a customer, getting someone to pay you to do what you want to do. And then there's also this Startup Owner's Manual from Steve Blank and Bob Dorff, highly recommended. It is a big tome, so don't worry about getting through all that. Really get through those customer discovery interviews. And learn everything you can. And here what you have is, this was a slide that I had in my deck. We had at the time that I gave this pitch, we had already done over 250 interviews with customers and have continued to do interviews the whole time that I've been in business. And recording those. Okay, so where are we going next? During your pitch, there are several things that you need that are really useful to think about, and I find this picture a really great summary of how to think about what's really important for your audience. And that's assuming that your audience is really people who will fund you, such as venture capitalists, angel investors, et cetera, which is a big focus at this governor's business plan. So there are 5 items. There's the problem, the solution, the market, the business, and the team. And the problem we've already addressed a little bit, making sure that you identify something where you will have a customer who wants to pay you for what you want to deliver. And if it's not a pain for your customer, it's going to be very hard to get them to put money into your pockets. So you need to find something that is painful for them and that you can find the painkiller. Second, you want no, don't go on yet. Please, Julie, back. Second, if your solution is not customer centric, you need to make sure, again, that solution is customer centric. Of course, through these interviews, you will find out for sure. Third, you have to have a big enough market that you need to understand. And if you don't have a big enough market that is venture backable, they will look at these numbers. They know these numbers really well. And always the venture capitalists have an idea how big that market needs to be. But in addition to that, you need to understand other things about the market. I'll come back to that on some quotes in the next slide. Fourth, you need a business plan, a business approach that's gonna make it possible for you to actually capture some of that business that's out there. If it's a big market, you can't get into everything right away. You got to get into this in some way, but you also have to have an approach that's acceptable to the industry. That's industry dependent. I'll come back to that a little bit again. And then finally, your team is so critical. If your team is not broad enough and diverse enough, it's going to be really hard to get someone interested in backing you. Next slide, please. So, a couple of my lessons learned. For that solution, if you are not customer centric, it really shows. Frequently, and I've heard this from several people along the way, frequently first-time founders can be in love with their ideas. And second-time founders can focus on meeting customers' needs as quickly as possible. You want to be a first-time founder that can focus on customers' needs. Second, with your market, you really want to make sure that you understand the distinction between your big market, which makes you really venture supportable, but also how are you going to enter that market? How are you going to get your foothold? You can't do the whole thing right at once. You've got to find a way in. Next slide, please. With your business model, every industry is different. How I enter the industry has to be distinct. I'm entering a very established industry, trying to come in with a unique way of selling my materials is not a good idea. But for you, you might be a coffee shop or something that can use some unique, interesting way to get your customers. So you really need to think about how to set up your business model based on what's out there for your industry and how either you're disrupting the business model or you're disrupting what you're delivering to the market and you're fitting into a business model that exists. And then the last thing is your team. You really want to embrace the opportunity to include diversity with your co-founders, with your team members, with your advisors. All of this is really critical so that you can look at your pathway forward from many different points of view. Next slide, please. So The other thing I really encourage you to think about is building your networks, and that's where the governor's business plan comes in. You want to build your networks from your industry point of view, build your networks with your funders, potential funders, build your networks with your peers, and build government networks if non-dilutive funding is also a possibility to help you grow. All of these, there's lots of different thoughts here about different types of ways to build these networks. This is really critical to think about this right from day one, because that's going to help you grow your company and keep moving. Next slide, please. My final comment is that every one of us has a different journey. And the pathway to the end is needs all sorts of different qualities. You want to be resourceful. You want to be able to find people to fill positions. You want to be able to look at guides from mentors, etc. You also, and resourceful about funding. You also want to be inquisitive, always talking to your customers, finding out what they want, and you need to be resilient. You never know what's coming down the pike, how things might change. And all of these characteristics really help to take you on your journey. And our journey's been from safely to Connovate. But I also encourage you very much, have a passion for the journey, not just for the destination. So thank you for your time. And I welcome any questions later.
Thank you so much, Carol. Great presentation. And, I liked how you outlined both the specifics and the passion that has to come with it, because, people who start companies, you encounter hurdles every day, and you need to get through them. It takes energy. It takes a stick to it kind of attitude. And so I know you've done that. So thank you so much. And yes, we will have some questions later, I'm sure. Now would love us to hear from Jonathan Fritz. He's a member of our board of directors. He's been a judge, as I noted earlier, for 21 years. He's got background in law, venture capital, association management, startups that he's mentored and been a part of. And so, Jonathan, thank you. Let's maybe we could just build on some of your observations over time, because you have seen many entries, and you, I'm sure, have come away with some thoughts about what makes for a successful entry at these various stages. So thanks, Jonathan. Let's take it away and have a little conversation here.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom, for having me. Really enjoy having these conversations and helping out entrepreneurs understand a little bit better about the contest. And what I'd like to encourage is that everyone who has any questions to put them into the chat so that we're able to address any specifics about the contest or anything that you'd like to hear from a judge's perspective. And that's really what I'd like to provide to everyone today. And I think what I'd like to start off with is that, there are some very obvious things, but still need to be said, because I have seen this over the years multiple times. And the key piece of this is that we have a contest here that have certain rules at different stages. And your job as an entrepreneur is to get to the next stage and to really advance and follow those particular rules, follow the particular guidelines so that you can go to the next stage. And it's not necessarily just, at the end of the day, trying to win the contest, but it is, like Carol had mentioned, the network that you will build along the way. Like Tom, you have mentioned, the mentors that will be provided to you to help you build on your business and to really maximize those aspects of the contest to help you further your business and to be more successful. So, there's a few things that I just kind of want to go down the list and mention, because I've seen it so many times. And one in particular is, throughout, the first section or the first submission, and then the second one, complete all of the sections. I can't tell you how many times I've seen sections that were not actually completed by contestants, and they get a 0 if that
Mhm.
section is blank.
Yeah, and
And
that seems very, very basic, but you're right. That happens occasionally, which is too bad.
it is, because the rest of the submission might be outstanding, and then because there was an oversight in not completing it, that it really impacts the overall score. The other thing is the amount of grammatical errors that I've seen over the years is pretty significant, and outstanding from my perspective, because you're asking, dozen or more judges to read your plan, and the view is that if you haven't read it or had others, you know, proofread it, and there's still grammatical errors, it makes the judges think that you didn't put necessarily the amount of time and effort into it. And make no mistake, even 250 words, that's a very difficult thing to do, is to distill your idea in your business into 250 words. But having it well written, prepared, flowing, complete thoughts, complete sentences. I, I I hate to have to say these sort of obvious things, but we've just seen them so many times over the years, and it's quite unfortunate when we do. I
Yeah,
think the other piece of it
yeah.
is
Find a second set of eyes is really important
yes.
because later on, if you're trying to pitch a potential customer who's going to be reading things that can be a turnoff.
Mhm. And overall, as a judge, I'm looking at the submissions and asking myself, can this team or can this founder execute on the vision that they have set forth? And that's the job, is to really make the judge believe that you have the capability, you have the team to be able to execute. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have the entire team in place today. And in fact, one of the things I've seen that's been very effective is there might be 2 or 3 founders, and maybe you've further along and you've hired 1 or 2 people or more. But if you identify holes in your management team and identify the type of person that you would like to fill that position, that tells the judges that you're thinking about this. You recognize what your needs are, you recognize that you don't have them today, and maybe you can hire them with funding, or you can hire them after you have, a certain number of customer accounts, whatever it might be. Um, Another thing is like the market size. We've seen this many times where submissions will say, well, we're only going to capture 0.1% of a $20 trillion market. And that is a lot of money in and of itself. Well, the problem is that yes, investors do like to see large markets, large, total addressable markets. But what they don't like to see is an entrepreneur that's only trying to go after a teeny tiny small portion of it. And you can't essentially make your business look better by just saying that you have a large market opportunity and that you're going to make a lot of money because you only need to capture a small amount of that market. um, Competition. There is always competition. And this is one of the pieces, I think, in the 1,000-word submission is, what you have to identify who your current or future competition is. And in, consumer inaction in and of itself is competition. And so, having the section filled out and saying there is no competitors, um, that's problematic from the standpoint of the judges. And think it through a little bit more about truly what is the competition for the product or service that you're selling, and that your company is going to be providing. I think that if you do have a strong team or you have, multiple team members, highlighting and emphasizing the strengths of that team are going to be critical. And having an A team with a B idea is, much better than a B team with an A idea. And so being able to emphasize and really highlight the backgrounds and the capabilities of those team members, in particular, their ability to execute and convince the judges through that experience and that team that they can execute. That's a key piece of it as well. Another thing is, Tom, you mentioned the different categories, advanced manufacturing, business services, IT, life sciences. And there's a little bit of strategy on selecting which one of those, to put your plan into at the outset, because most plans could potentially fit into more than one of those categories. And, Tom shared the numbers by each of those categories. And if you're thinking that you're on the fence between two, potentially putting into the category that has historically fewer submissions, and so therefore there's less competition within the contest in that category, is a potential strategic route for you to take. Building on what Carol had mentioned, customer discovery is critical. And from the very beginning, having conversations with potential customers and being able to translate that into potential traction for your company and convey that within the business plan contest, that you are in conversation, you are discovering potential customers, and you're learning from that, and then conveying what you're learning in the submissions is going to be a very strong point for the submission. I also think that you look at the overall contest, and we kind of start off as a business plan contest with these two submissions, and then it turns into a little bit more of a pitch contest. And so I would encourage that the entrepreneurs think about each of these stages and really focus on what they need to do to win that stage, or at least not necessarily win, but advance to the next stage. And at the Entrepreneurs Conference in June, which I attended for many years and was one of the co-chairs for a couple of years, it's a phenomenal opportunity for you to get up on stage and present your business, because it's not just the judges anymore that are seeing it. It is everybody that's in the audience, and the network and the opportunities that will be available to you as a result of that can be transformative for your business and for your success going forward. Tom, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. And thanks so much, Jonathan. Great perspectives. And as you noted, I mean, some are just simple things, make sure you fill everything out, make sure things are spelled right. So that's excellent. There's one here. This is from Zeke. How does it look to recognize the limitations of your tech in a market, thus reducing the target market, despite the addressable market being accessible after funding? Is it better to omit that?
And I'm rereading the question here just to make sure that I understand what Zeke is asking.
Yeah.
So limitations of your technology in a particular market, and then reducing the target market. Okay, so is it better to omit? It sounds like he's asking, is it better to omit the limitations of your technology because it reduces the size of the market? I think that you've got to be honest with the size of your market. Now, one of the things that entrepreneurs will do is, and Carol had alluded to this as well, is that there could be a very large market opportunity, but you have to focus on one segment or one piece of that, initially, because there is significantly, small number of resources available, financial resources, human resources, what have you, for startups that are just getting started. And so you can't go after everything because you'll spin your wheels and you won't be successful. So that means that, can you build upon that market opportunity by showing success within, one segment of it? And I think that is a very effective way for some companies and startups to operate and to start off. And it's an effective way to show traction, because if you're able to show that traction over time, you say, look, we're going to target this piece of the market because it's a little bit more of a low hanging fruit and we can execute effectively. Then we're able to show to our investors, we're able to show to the market that we can successfully execute, and then you can go after that bigger opportunity. So Zeke, I hope that addresses
Yeah.
your question. And if it doesn't, please feel free to pose another question.
And Carol, you as much answered that question earlier in your own presentation, because batteries being this massive market and battery materials being a part of that, but you also saw there might be limitations in different parts of the battery industry. Am I correct on that?
Correct, yeah. For me to enter the market, it is such an established conservative market. It's actually something I'm still ongoing with, getting into the market. And identifying that pathway to getting into the market is really critical to identify that beachhead market. So actually, I think your pathway is a good one, Zika, that you just try to address something that someone wants to pay you for, that addresses something that's really critical, and get established and demonstrate you can do something of value, and then you can expand into this bigger market by perhaps expanding your offering and such, which you have now. Since you have some revenue in, that puts you in a place where you can actually continue to grow and get more of the market over time.
Yeah. Well, as you noted, at the end of the day, getting paid is a part of this.
That's the
This
big
is the big one. So there's another question here from Jay Berry. I have experience with a reputable marketing company on a previous project. Is subcontracting that portion of that role on the team a favorable plan, or do we have to hire our own staff? Cost would be reasonably equal over the first year. My first answer on this is, if you've got somebody that you trust, and the judges would see as being credible, I'd say it's just fine to subcontract. Others?
I agree. And I think that having the ability to subcontract quality team members, and I say that purposefully, is that even though they're not a W-2 employee, doesn't mean that they can't be identified and listed and be viewed as a team member. And then, in the presentation materials, in your pitch deck or what have you, have that individual listed as, your head of marketing or whatever it might be. You're just simply contracting out, those resources, and it's completely typical, normal. And, I would say is that it would be in many cases easier to do so until the time that you've got enough resources to really bring that person on full time.
Yeah. And in some cases, judges might even view it more favorably because the costs can sometimes be lower. And if something goes wrong with a contractor, well, there are steps that can be taken that person could be out of the picture versus an employee, which might take a lot more work and heartache.
Sure.
Does that sound good? Okay. I know we've also got some frequently asked questions that I want to review. They'll be on some slides here. And I'd love to hear what Jonathan and Carol think about those. But and by the way, we had more about the awards, but that was, as I mentioned, some of the in-kind awards are legal, accounting, web development, office space, prototyping, marketing. So the sponsors of the contest are can often offer those kinds of things. So frequently asked questions: am I eligible to participate? Well, yeah, that's a good starter, right? You got to be 18 years old or older. have a business plan that leverages technology, and that can be very broadly stated. And you got to be based in Wisconsin and or plan to locate a business in Wisconsin. And you've not received a lot of private equity money to date when you enter on January 31st, at least for the idea in its current form. And so for purposes of this contest, private equity is generally angel or venture, but you can include equity investments by accelerators. Does not include SBIR, STTR grants. Carol, you might have had one when you entered, if I recall.
Yeah.
And doesn't include bank loans, non-dilutive accelerator program grants, or funding from friends and family. So if you got any questions, just let us know. Yeah. Next one. Can I use intellectual property in my business? Yeah, all IP used in these plans and business ideas and plans must be owned or licensed by the BPC entrant. For our purposes, examples include, but are not limited to trademarks, copyrights, patent pending status, or an issued patent. So it has to be your IP is the bottom line there. Any other thoughts on that, Jonathan or Carol? Yeah.
I think if you have intellectual property that's appropriate for your business, you need to acknowledge that. And you need to acknowledge if you need to get a license for it, or something that you already have in your possession. It can be very powerful because patent pending or patented ideas are critical sometimes for making headway into an industry. So it can be very credibility. It can help your credibility.
Yeah.
And as a recovering patent attorney, I can say that the value of IP could be critical to your business and may not be worth much for others. So software patents are generally not the most valuable pieces, but if it's, advanced manufacturing or it's, pharma or more product based, then these could be significant moats to prevent competition and give you that overall competitive advantage. And to the extent that you do have intellectual property, or you are negotiating those rights, say with the university, and you're spinning the company out from that, that research and intellectual property that's been developed, then identify it and really, highlight that because I think it can be potentially valuable.
Yeah. No, thanks, Jonathan. So as you noted, recovering patent attorney, is there a 10-step process for that or?
It's more like 32 steps.
Okay, Carol.
A person asking about prototyping and their provisional patent. Jonathan, maybe you can comment on, my sense would be I would want the provisional patent in before I submit my materials, even for this governor's business plan, maybe. But maybe you can comment on that, Jonathan.
Sure. So, I mean, if you're planning on putting substantial details into your plan about that particular intellectual property, you're going to want to file in advance. Generally, there's not enough room in the 250 or even in the 1,000-word submission. And maybe you don't even have to highlight all the details. That would be an enabling disclosure, a public disclosure that kind of triggers some limitations, if you will, on the ability to get certain rights within US and foreign countries. But I would advise you that you should speak to an intellectual property attorney in advance, especially if you believe that IP is going to be a critical factor in the success of your business.
Very good. Okay, next slide, Julie. May I enter more than one idea? Yes, there's no limit. In fact, we've seen this many times over the years. People might enter two just because they're splitting their or casting their ideas in different ways in different categories, as long as it's a clearly different sort of plan. And so it's we've actually seen people advance with more than one ideas in the past. So that's good. You have to create a new account for each entry, and that's a you'll require we require a different email address for that. Why is that? Because of the sorting through the some confusion about, hey, here's Joe Smith again and the same email, and so judges, it's good for how we deal with our judges. And so if contact us at info@gov's business plan contest if you have any questions about that. And the one thing to warn about is if you enter more than one plan, it's time, right? It takes a while to get them all done in a way that would be helpful to you. Most people submit just one, but the option is there. So, all right. And additional resources, we talked about mentors. SCORE is, I think a lot of people have heard about that, and it's a network of about 11,000 volunteers around the country. Mentoring, counseling, business tools, workshops. They have been a part of this contest for a long time. The Center for Technology Commercialization. They are great at helping with some of these more, naughty tech-based questions. Carol, did you touch base with the center at any time in your process?
Oh, absolutely. I've worked with CTC for many, many different aspects of before, during, and after the Wisconsin Business Governors Plan.
Yeah.
I highly recommend getting familiar with what they're doing. If you have a technology development that you are doing for assistance with applying for grants from any federal agency, so they're called SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Grants, or STTR, which are Technology Transfer Grants. And there's a very small distinction between them, whether or not you're working with a university or something like that. But the CTC experts can really help you a lot with those. And I highly recommend them. It's for hard tech, I call it, ventures. The funding, this non-dilutive funding through these mechanisms is super valuable. And something you may not know, all federal agencies are required to set aside up to 7% of their funding specifically for these opportunities. And so that really helps to give you an opportunity, no matter what you're doing, to apply for those types of grants and develop what you're doing beyond what you can do with just your own funds to get going. Really recommend it.
And a great example in your case, Carol, of the kind of the following through. Like that was my memory that early on in your process you touched base with CTR, but you continue to, and so that's a great resource.
I've had 3.5 million, no more than that now, from these types of grants. Oh. And I was just awarded a 1 million DOE grant, which is not SBIR, but because of those developments through the SBIR, that has positioned us to be competitive in these other grants as well. Huge.
That's awesome. That's great to know. And then we have on our website our Wisconsin Entrepreneurs Toolkit, which we developed, and so you can see the link is there. And there was a follow-up question. Can we ask questions of mentors before January 31st if we have submitted our abstract already, or do we need to wait until February 1st? I personally think you can just fire away. I mean, if Julie could probably provide some more links there, but I think it's okay. Is if you've got your plan in, and it sounds like perhaps you do. These are all resources that are publicly and broadly available anyway. So, Jonathan or Carol, any thoughts on that?
I would say leverage mentors as best as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And be thoughtful about it, and purposeful about who you would like to have as a mentor, and making sure that there are, you know, particular areas of the growth of your business and the execution of your, you know, plan that those mentors can, you know, specifically help you out with.
Mhm. Good, good. All right. Yeah, and I think it's probably good to have a continuity with, if you find a mentor that you have enjoyed working with and you find that they're credible and they're really helpful, I think don't bounce around. It would be my general sense of things, but try to stick with that person.
Mhm.
Is that good? Okay. All right. Well, there is Julie's direct email, but the info email also works. And so she's going to be around throughout the duration of this contest. So yeah, get to know her because she can help you a lot. Um, Closing thoughts from Carol or Jonathan on anything else that we failed to touch on that can, potential contestants might want to know.
Feel free to go first, Carol.
My closing thoughts are really, enjoy the journey. It's, there's a lot of different ups and downs along the journey. And, really have that passion for the journey. That's what will get you through every day. And, good luck.
Yeah,
I
same.
think that if you invest the time and energy, it's going to pay back multiple times. And especially with the network, especially with engaging with other contestants, you know, attending the events, attending the mentorship sessions. And then, you know, if you are able to get to, you know, the later stages, one thing to think about is if there are multiple folks in your on your team, the CEO is not always the best presenter. And so think long and hard about who you want to have up on stage. And most of the times it is the CEO, but maybe it's another co-founder that's the chief marketing officer or chief operating officer, president, or some other title. And maybe they're just a little bit better at, you know, presenting in person. Because at the end of the day, that capability is going to be key. And it's not for everybody presenting in front of, what is it, Tom? 2, 3, 400 people.
Yeah, it'd probably be about, well, yeah, it depends on the day, but probably up to 400.
Mhm. So, but also like Carol said, have fun and
Yeah,
feel free to reach out with any question.
yeah, absolutely. So, well, thanks again for those who have joined us today, and especially to Jonathan and Carol for bringing their experience and ideas and just general views on this to you folks today. And thanks to Julie on our team for helping to tee this up. And we hope to see you. We hope to see your entries come in by the 31st. Remember, before midnight. And yeah, we'll see you live or in other ways as we move along in the process. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks again.